So you'll get to see a little of that right now when we do our final piece this afternoon. And this last piece is called Pay to Play. How many of you know Shakespeare? Practically everybody. And then how many of you know that even Shakespeare is subject to budget cuts? The way So you're about to find out what goes on backstage in Pay to Play, written by our own Tom Raber. So if you like the piece, you can tell him when the performance is over. So with that, what are you going to do? Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, let us now introduce Miss Wells, Mr. Tweed, as they are dealing with getting the next production ready for opening night.
Good.
Well, Julius Roberts may not be Laurence Olivier,
Oh, he'll suffice. The reason the run sold out is all because of him. People wanting to see the matinee idol live and in person on stage. It really doesn't matter whether he can act or not. But it's good that he's not bad.
The supporting cast, I think, is strong. Perhaps they make Julius look a little pale in contrast. If he didn't have to go back to New York and stay until opening night, and if this wasn't his one and only rehearsal, I might have been able to bring him up to the acting level of the rest of the cast.
It's not their acting. It's their size. You have a legion on stage.
But there's only as many characters as Shakespeare wrote.
Budget, Miss Wells, budget. Each actor is equity, and equity equals professional compensation. Now, they may have enjoyed the luxury of an unlimited expense account in Elizabethan England, but today we have to keep our eye on costs. Like right here in the very first scene.
But what?
Why are there 2 sentinels when one will do?
Well, now, since Shakespeare's been dead 400 years, we just can't call up and ask him, what were you thinking?
Yes, you do have to wonder. But then, yes, but then writers have always tended to be long-winded, and Shakespeare was the worst offender. Back then, what they needed was a good editor who could have wielded a sharp red pencil to Shakespeare's overwritten histrionics. So I am going to have to do what should have been done back then and write Francisco out of the play.
Mr. Tweed, please rewrite him back in. Francisco is a minor character, true, but in those lines, the tone of the play is set, as well as the foreshadowing of events.
That is all anticlimactic.
Oh, Mr. Tweed, I can't fire him. Often after midnight, he remains here alone, except for the ghosts who haunts the theater, to evoke the nuances of the role. He seasons his lines with the grayness of Harbinger, and with overtones, the quaver of his voice sends shivers, and the frost of the night can be felt in the huddled halt of his wall.
Bad writing rubs off, because your flowery phrasing parallels Shakespeare's verbose vocabulary, and I can't understand the poppycock of either one of you. That's what I hate about Shakespeare. Nobody ever translates him into English.
But it is English.
You call that English? What I just heard, you call that English? Oh, it might be a bastardized English, perhaps, but if someone like, say, Danielle Steele had written something like that, she'd be called a hack. If it makes you feel better, give Francisco a going away party. Tell Francisco his part has been downsized, and fire Francisco!
You mean fire David Miller?
Who?
David Miller, that's the actor who plays Francisco. You can't fire Francisco. Francisco is a fictional character in the play. David Miller is the actor who plays Francisco. You get what I mean here?
Fire both of them.
The absence of even a minor character undermines the achievements of the collective cast and subtracts from the wholeness of the play. I can't fire him. I won't fire him. To lose a cast member this late in the production would put the entire cast out of mettle.
Be reasonable. The producers have backed the play and ask only that we not squander their resources unnecessarily. Editing of scripts is common. Old TV shows get snipped all the time to fit in more commercials. Now, if great shows like Mr. Ed and Lost in Space can get pruned, then a second-rate script like Hamlet should not be spared.
I want it noted for the record that it's under strong protest. But if it's necessary, we can perhaps work around it, though I feel it will harm the show.
Very well. Now, there are a few more things that we need to go over. Those costumes must be taking quite a bite out of our allocation.
Well, both costumers are already putting in 20-hour days. We couldn't have all the outfits ready by curtain if we lose one of the costumers.
I'm afraid we're going to have to lose both of them.
But where would we get the costumes at this point?
Go to a vintage store. Find clothing from the 1600s. Surely there should be a large selection because back then they made clothing to last.
This show is sold out. Their returns must be substantial. Certainly they can afford to keep the costumers. A drop in the bucket against their gross.
Oh, the net exceeded even our expectation. But you're missing the point. In today's economic climate, it's not enough just to earn an enormous profit. You have to generate as much return as possible. And one way to do that is by cutting costs. So, in addition to firing the costumers, we're also going to have to axe the lighting designer.
No. It looks costly because of the skill of the designer, but the money is well spent because the shadows and colored filters adds an ethereal aura to the action. It brings the illusion of heightened senses, while at the same time mellows the visuals with tone and hue. The fog is vital to the atmosphere when the ghost appears in a wispy, ethereal swirl, which creates an otherworldly experience.
All over and above what the play calls for, when a simple on-off wall switch will work just fine. Off, on.
No. I am not going to continue to allow the quality of this show suffer any further. We're cut to the bone already. How far can they go, Mr. Tweed, until there's... How much less yogurt can there be? How much worse can I read this? How much less yogurt can there be until we have nothing but an empty cup?
Spend, spend, spend. Big budget, extravaganza. That's all actors and directors and period costumers and lighting designers push for. with someone else footing the bill. But who's going to pay for all that, Miss Wells? It's this, it's that, and before you know it, you're faced with tremendous cost overruns. That's why I can assure you there will be even further reductions.
No. I'm not making those cuts. Furthermore, I'm putting David Miller as Francisco back in the play.
I see. Well, I'm sure the producers will be sorry to hear of your decision. Fortunately, it will only take a minute to hire your replacement. What is it they say? 1,000 qualified directors for every job. Of course, we will write you a letter of recommendation. Still, it's so sad to see you go over a situation that can't be changed, whether it's you or your replacement.
My replacement, you say, will have to adjust to those costs?
I'm afraid so. And even more, I'm afraid.
Perhaps I could stay on. It will take a lot of work and maneuvering to put on a show with these budget constraints, and a new director may not know how to do more with less.
Exactly! And I think you're just the person to do it.
A message from Sue Johnson, Executive Director, Wake Up and Live's Actors Studio. Dear art supporters, there is no charge to be featured on Wake Up and Live with the Arts, which airs on YouTube, Cox Cable, and Cleveland Cable Access. However, as an artistic community service program, all we ask in return, Wake Up and Live would appreciate and accept any amount tax-deductible donations via MasterCard, Visa, cash, or checks. Donations may also be made via PayPal at www.wakeupandlives.org. Checks should be made out to Wake Up and Live's Actors Studio and mailed to 19333 Van Aken Boulevard, Shaker Heights, Ohio, 44122. Attention, Sue Johnson. If you would like to showcase your talent, special event, community organization, or arts-related business on Wake Up and Live with the Arts, contact Sue Johnson at wakeup4664@aol.com. Remember, donations help us keep the arts alive in Cleveland.